Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eco Markets Australia's Essentials Series Know and Go webinar. Today's topic is Beyond the Horizon, Advancing the Reef Credit Scheme. I would first like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia, in particular acknowledging their care and connection to land, sea and community. And we also pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us on this webinar today. My name's Marie Adsed. I'm the CEO here at Eco Markets Australia, and our presenter is Hannah Tilla-Kamara, who is the Reef Credit Secretariat. She's our regulator, so to speak, of the scheme and is the perfectly placed person to step you through all of the ways in which we are proposing to evolve and improve the Reef Credit Scheme to enhance participation and that user experience. We created the Essential series to build a collaborative and informed community around environmental markets as they emerge and grow into effective market mechanisms to finance nature restoration and conservation. These Know and Go webinars are deliberately relaxed, short, designed to bring us all up to speed on topics of interest and get us back on with the day in under an hour. In a moment, I'm going to hand over to Hannah, who will present the topic for approximately 20 minutes, and that will be followed by a Q&A opportunity to unpack what she's presented, and feel free to ask as many questions as you like. The aim is then we will wrap up around 1:30, if not before, depending on how many questions you have. Like usual, your microphones and videos are all muted automatically. So if you do want to ask a question, and we really hope you've got lots of them, use the Q&A function at the top of your screen, or you can use the chat if you have trouble with the Q&A. And please don't feel you have to wait until Hannah's finished with her presentation. You're more than welcome to pop your questions in as you think of them, because that gives us a bit of advance notice and we can start preparing. And also too, we'll collate those at the end. And Liza Davis, our landholder liaison, who you will have met if you watched our first webinar, she's going to be facilitating today's Q&A with Hannah. I should also mention that this webinar is being recorded. The presentation part will be posted on our webinar alongside the other one, so that we're building a bank of learning modules, and together with a curated collection of your questions, which we will have as written FAQs. So if you ever miss a topic, we've got you. If you would like to come across a topic, you really want to share it with your colleagues and across your network, that's fantastic. You'll be able to do that. We will send you the link to the webinar in a follow-up email after today, but it will also be posted on the Essential Series page of our website. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to you now, Hannah, to get started.
Thanks so much, Marie, and thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon. As Marie mentioned, this is our second of the series, and today we'll be talking specifically about the review of the Reef Credit Scheme, which is currently open for public consultation until the 7th of May. We're going to be covering why we're undertaking the review, the consultation process, as well as a high-level overview of the proposed changes and how you guys can provide feedback to help us continue to grow and expand the Reef Credit Scheme. At the end of the presentation, there'll be the Q&A. As Marie mentioned, you can leave your comments in the Q&A online, and Liza Davis will be moderating that for us. Just as a starting point, and for those who are joining us for the first time, I wanted to give you a quick overview of the Reef Credit Scheme. At our last webinar, we covered the scheme elements in detail, and as Marie said, that webinar can be found on EMA's website if you want to recap or just watch it in detail again or for the first time. The Reef Credit Scheme is a world-first and innovative water quality market, funding best practice land management to improve the health and the resilience of the Great Barrier Reef. The scheme was conceived in response to the consensus that a market mechanism to incentivise water quality improvements across the catchments of the Barrier Reef was urgently needed. The scheme enables land managers to undertake projects that improve water quality through changes in land management to generate a tradable unit of pollutant reduction. This is known as a reef credit. A reef credit represents a quantifiable volume of nutrient pesticide, or sediment prevented from entering the Great Barrier Reef catchment. Since the scheme's inception in 2017, more than 46,000 reef credits have been generated, which has diverted over 46,000 kilograms of dissolved inorganic nitrogen from entering the reef. As Australia's first independent administrators of this voluntary market, we want to future-proof the scheme to ensure its continued growth, break down the known barriers so that we can expand the participation, and ensure that landholders and investors continue to have confidence in our programs and in the high level of quality assurance. So, why do we do a scheme review? This is the second time EMA have undertaken a review of the Reef Credit Scheme. The first one was in 2021, when the scheme transitioned from beta phase, or version 1, to fully operational, which is how it is now as version 2. Since that time, there have been several learnings, as well as stakeholder feedback, which has helped inform the proposed amendments that I'm going to talk to you about in today's webinar. We greatly value your feedback on the scheme, and as pioneers in this emerging market, we want to get the balance right for all participants. This review provides that formal mechanism for you to have your say on the proposed amendments, and it's going to help us continue to grow this scheme. Undertaking the reviews ensures that the scheme continues to operate effectively, and it grows the market confidence in the scheme's integrity to deliver environmental and financial outcomes for the reef and all participants within the scheme. So, what is our intent with this review? Firstly, it's to enhance the accessibility of the scheme by making it easier to interact and understand how the scheme works. To do this, we are proposing additions to the scheme, such as the project application summary, a simple methodology guide, and guidance for public claims, so that all participants can navigate the types of claims that can be made about reef credits. We are also seeking to address the known barriers. For example, extending the lifespan of a reef credit from 3 to 5 years to allow a longer time to find a buyer for the reef credits. And lastly, we are looking at growing participation, which is crucial to the long-term viability and success of this scheme. Additions such as the inclusion of a pipeline listing will allow project proponents to indicate their intent to register a project. And it sends a signal to investors about the types of future credits that are on the horizon. I will now talk through the full range of the proposed amendments throughout the webinar. On this slide, before we get into the detail, you'll see an overview of the documents that we are going to be talking about in relation to this review. The Reef Credit Scheme is made up of a series of rules and requirements which govern the scheme. The review covers a range of major and minor amendments to the suite of the documentation, and this also includes the definitions and the introduction of some new procedures and templates. The Reef Credit documentation is made up of the Reef Credit Guide, which provides an overview of the scheme, the Reef Credit Standard, which sets out the overarching rules, including how to develop projects and methodologies, validate, register, monitor, and verify projects, as well as how issuance, tracking, and transfer of reef credits is undertaken. The standard is also supported by the Reef Credit Methodology Application and Review Procedure and the Reef Credit Project Application and Crediting Procedure. All of these can be found on our website. So, the public consultation is open from the 8th of April until the 7th of May. You can scan the QR code on the screen now, which will take you to the webpage. That is where you will find the discussion paper, which outlines the proposed amendments in detail, as well as the Reef Credit Scheme documentation, which I mentioned on that previous slide. When you look at these documents, you will see the track changes that show exactly what we are proposing to change. And you will also find the feedback form for download, which is the formal way to submit your feedback to the Secretariat. Submissions will close at 5 p.m. on the 7th of May. And after that, we will review all submissions in detail. We will be de-identifying them and then making them available publicly on EMA's website. We're hoping to finalise the review and provide the updated versions by July. So, what exactly is changing as part of this review? Firstly, the project start date has been extended. We have heard feedback from our project proponents that the current one-year timeframe from the project start date to when the project is validated has presented a challenge, particularly where the commencement of project activities is delayed. EMA recognised this as a potential barrier to project development and the compliance within the scheme, and therefore we are proposing that the timeframe be changed to 3 years. This is similar in other environmental markets. We feel that the extra 2 years strikes the right balance between allowing delivery of project activities and not so long that any additionality concerns may arise for a project. The next proposed amendment is to add a pipeline listing. A pipeline listing is essentially the forecasting of future projects. EMA has received feedback from potential scheme investors that to support their ESG planning, it would be valuable to understand the scope of reef credit projects that are being developed, the pollutants that they're targeted, and the potential supply of future reef credits. This allows project developers to provide details of their intent to develop a project without necessarily completing all the requirements of project validation and registration. The pipeline listing will be valid for 3 years and will be published on our website. To support this process, the pipeline project application has been developed and it would need to be completed by the project proponent. This process would include providing a project description and summary, indicating which methodology is being used. And importantly of note here, you could also propose to use a methodology that is still in draft form. How many reef credits may be generated, as well as evidence that the key parties have an intent to develop the project, and a stat deck that provides evidence of legal right and consent. The intention is that after 3 years, the projects listed within the pipeline would then be fully registered. The reef credit validity period refers to the lifespan of a reef credit. At the moment, a reef credit is valid for 3 years from the date it is issued, and then it is automatically retired. This allows time to sell, transfer, and/or retire the reef credit after it is issued. The review is seeking to extend the period from 3 to 5 years, and the proposed revisions will be applied in the standard, the project application, and crediting procedure. As part of the review, we're also looking to develop guidance for participants to help them understand how best to operate within the parameters of the scheme. As part of this, it's proposed that public claims guidance be developed and a best practice standard. The guidance for public claims about reef credits will help participants to understand the types of claims that can be made about reef credits, such as projects and the impacts achieved through those projects, and the use of the reef credits in our registry. This guidance will ensure public claims are accurate and not overstated. And you can find examples of these types of claims within the discussion paper on our website. We see the public claims guidance as an important education tool for scheme participants, as where environmental claims are not accurate or they're overstated, it can lead to accusations of greenwashing. Secondly, that proposed best practice principles will cover the general principles and minimum standards for conduct by participants within the scheme. As the Reef Credit Scheme is a new market, EMA is conscious of the need to protect market integrity and the reputation of the scheme, but also assist project developers and their advisors by setting expectations. A few changes are being proposed to the management of methodologies within the scheme as well. Firstly, the review proposes the inclusion of third-party initiated revisions for methodologies. Interested third parties have from time to time suggested changes to approved methodologies to address a range of matters, and this would provide a process for them to propose those method revisions. At the moment, this can only be initiated by the developer or by the Secretariat. We are seeking feedback specifically on how EMA should manage requests of this nature. Also, EMA is eager to encourage the development of new methodologies and to provide opportunities for interested parties to connect and collaborate as part of this process. For example, connecting researchers that develop a new methodology, a new modelling tool, with a consultancy with expertise in drafting these methodologies. So the Methodology Development Hub is a way that we see this could be facilitated, with the hub being publicly available on EMA's website. The purpose of the hub is to foster collaborative effort between the developers. Importantly, though, EMA does not develop methodologies. It is our role only to review and approve them. The hub would be available on the website, as I've mentioned, and include expressions of interest in developing new methodologies in the initial stages of research and development, and suggestions for revisions and improvements to be approved to approved methodologies. 3 new procedures have been developed to support the scheme, as well as the renaming of 2 existing procedures. So we have the new stakeholder grievance and dispute resolution procedures. When the Reef Credit Scheme became fully operational in 2021, the stakeholder grievance procedure and the dispute procedure were noted as forthcoming. So these two procedures have now been drafted and they will be available for public comment as part of this review. We have also developed an approved verifier's application procedure, which has been created to bring together into one document information about applying to become an approved verifier. The information was previously contained within the standard and the project application and crediting procedure, which we think was maybe a little bit difficult for verifiers to find and identify. So we think the format of a separate procedure will make the information easier to find. To be approved as a verifier of the scheme, the verifier application form will also need to be completed. But once the approval is done, it will be valid for 10 years unless a verifier is disqualified by the Secretariat. A few things here are also changing for project proponents. They will no longer be required to complete the verifier nomination form every time they want to verify a Reef Credit project. And they will be able to select their nominated verifier from EMA's approved list on the website. Content relating to this process has been updated across the standard. We have also renamed two documents to better reflect their intended scope. And that's the project crediting procedure, which is now called the project application and crediting procedure, and the methodology approval procedure, which has been renamed to the methodology application and review procedure. We also have a range of new templates that have been developed, and these include the Reef Credit Project Summary, which will form part of the project application process. The intent of this summary is to help stakeholders better understand the scope of validated Reef Credit projects. The new template will ensure that project proponents have input into the information that is publicly available about their project. It will simplify the process for the Secretariat and the registry provider. It will reduce the risk that private or commercially sensitive information in the project application is accidentally made public. And it ensures that there is publicly accessible information available about the Reef Credit projects that meet all stakeholder needs. Secondly, we have the simple methodology guide. Due to the complexities and scientific nature of methods, the requirement for method developers to provide a simple methodology guide as part of their approval process is proposed. The aim is just to help stakeholders understand how to apply the methodology when developing and implementing a project from start to end and best interpret the science. This is in line with best practice in other markets. The simple guide will provide a step-by-step instructions on how to implement a project using that method, explain the concepts and logic of the method, and explain the science and practice that underpins the method. Finally, we also have a range of new project templates that will be developed to assist project proponents with navigating the application process. We have had queries from some project developers about the sort of information that should be included in their supporting documentation and how to go about formatting that. In response to this, it's proposed that the Secretariat will develop templates for the supporting documentation so that the information requirements are really clear. This will also assist the Secretariat to locate key information when we review the project applications for validation and registration. Some examples of these templates might include the Reef Credit Eligibility Plan or the Reef Credit Project Plan, and those all form part of that application process. The Reef Credit fee schedule is also being reviewed, and it sets out the fees that apply under the scheme. It was last updated in October of 2021. We're currently reviewing the structure of the fees that we charge for administration because the current fee structure is no longer fit for purpose. Our focus in reviewing the fees is on the long-term sustainability of EMA to administer the scheme. We are currently considering a range of structures, including a sliding scale, which you may be familiar with and is similar to the Vera Plastics model. We are seeking feedback on other examples of how other environmental administrators structure their fees and what could possibly be considered. We are also proposing to add the pipeline listing fee to the schedule and remove the methodology compensation rate. A range of new and amended Reef Credit definitions are also proposed, and these can all be found within the discussion paper. Some amendments have been made to the permanence period, which is to require that it's 50 years or as specified in the relevant methodology, removing the words or longer period to remove any constraint that it must be longer. Reef credit has been updated to remove the reference to lagoon, aligning with the current scientific consensus of catchment. And crediting period has been updated to allow for a delay to the start of the crediting period where project activities include significant capital works before monitoring can commence. We have also added some new definitions, and we propose to remove definitions where they may no longer be applicable throughout the scheme documentation or simply where they don't need to be defined. Finally, we have a few minor revisions. Clarification has been added to the project start date within the standard, and that's to clarify the eligibility for the pilot project status. The beta phase period has been extended to end on the 14th of October 2021, so projects must be registered for validation before the 14th of October 2024. And we have also added some new activities to the positive list in the standard. These activities now include wastewater bioremediation, grazing land management, wetland establishment and rehabilitation, stream bank and riparian zone restoration, irrigation management, and urban stormwater management. If there are activities that you think could also be added to this list, we would welcome that feedback. Lastly, we've just made some minor edits to all documentation to improve the readability across all documents and to add clarity. So, the next steps. As I mentioned, we invite you to read the discussion paper that is currently on our website and to review the marked up changes in the supporting documents. You can then submit your feedback using the feedback form and email it to me, the Secretariat, before 5 p.m. on the 7th of May. And just a note that all submissions, as I said earlier, will be de-identified, but we will be publishing them on the website.